Good morning, students. In the last class, we have completed A reading, and the name of the lesson is The Dear Departed, Part 1. And I think you have remembered the story of that lesson. What is the story about? Yes, The Dear Departed 1 was a one-act play. The one-act play is often taught to be a short form of the long play. A one-act play is a separate literary form by itself. Sometimes situations or some particular phase in the life of an individual is chosen and is depicted in an effective manner. Various problems connected with the life of the individual are discussed. The story exposes the sad fact that the human beings often become dehumanized in the face of greed and minor material gain. The one act play written by William Stanley Houghton is a satirical play. Thus, various shots of things love, marriage, divorce, justice, crime, punishments, customs, misery, moral values, etc. are all the suitable themes for a one act play. In this play, the writer reveals how elderly people are mistreated. The writer uses different literary devices to criticize basic human characteristics in his play. He uses humor, sarcasm, irony, and a twist in the play to criticize human traits. The author tried to bring out the characters of the two daughters towards their father. The two sisters are interested in their father's property rather than to show courtesy, care, and affection towards their father. The story begins with Mrs. Slater telling her daughter Victoria to change her dress before the arrival of her sister Elizabeth and Elizabeth's husband, Ben. Mrs. Slater's husband Henry has sent them a telegram with message of the death of his father-in-law. When her daughter Victoria asked about the cause of their arrival, she said that she would come to discuss her father's affairs. Mrs. Slater asked her husband to wear her father's new slippers. Henry wonders if they would come at all to share of what their father has left. Mrs. Slater suggested to replace their old chest drawers with the valuable bureau of her father, which is in his bedroom. Her husband agreed to do after some hesitation. Mrs. Slater wanted to do before her sister's arrival. Mrs. Slater and her husband closed the door and carried the old chest of drawers upstairs. When Victoria asked her parents if they are pinching grandfather's bureau, her father replied that her grandfather has given it to her mother before his death. Mrs. Slater carried one handsome clock from her father's room. They brought the pretty old-fashioned bureau downwards and put in the place of the chest of drawers. At the same time, Victoria ushers in Ben and Mrs. Jordan. They greeted one another. Mrs. Jordan remarks that their father has gone at last. She told them that the old man had been merry that morning and had gone out to pay his insurance. Ben and Mrs. Jordan remarked that it was a good thing on his part. According to Mrs. Slater, their father is found dead when she takes up a bit of something for him on tray. Mrs. Ben and her husband did not want to look at the old man. They preferred to have a tea, and so Mrs. Slater gets tea ready. They think of publishing the announcement of the death of the old man in the papers. Then they decide to look through the old man's things and make a list of them. Mrs. Jordan tells her sister that Father has promised his gold watch to their Jimmy. Then Victoria tells them that Grandpa didn't pay the insurance. Ben calls him the drunken old beggar. Both the sisters complain that they have to put up with their father for all those years. Then Mrs. Slater asks Victoria to bring the bunch of keys from grandfather's room. She went to the upstairs and got back very scared and tells them that grandpa was getting up. They were transfixed with amazement. The vigorous and well colored old man Abel Merriweather came in. So till here we have seen in the part 1. So today we will be continuing with the other part, means this lesson is continued in B reading also. So today we will see that part, that is B reading, the Dear Departed part 2. We are going to learn today. Let's see the story. The Dear Departed part 2. Abel. Then Abel, when he normally we have seen what he has came downstairs, isn't it? So then Abel, what's the matter with little Vicky? Then he was asking that, as Victoria was very much scared and afraid seeing that the old man is getting up. So he has observed that fear, and he is asking that what's the matter with little Vicky. He sees Ben and Mrs. Jordan and he says, hello, what brings you here? How's yourself, Ben? He questions when he saw his daughter, Mrs. Jordan and Ben. And he says hello, and he inquires that what brings you here, and asks them, how's yourself, Ben? Then Abel thrusts his hand at Ben, who skips back smartly and retreats with Mrs. Jordan to a safe distance below the sofa. Then Mrs. Slater means Abel asked what is the matter, means why this girl is afraid, and also after asking that he saw Mrs. Jordan and Ben, he inquires about their coming to their house, and also ask them how they are. So after that Mrs. Slater says that approaching Abel gingerly means in a careful way, Mrs. Slater approaches her father and she says, father, is that you? Then she questions her father that, father, is that you? And she pokes himself with her hand to see if he is solid. So asking that, father, is that you? She just pokes her hand in her father, pokes him. She pokes her father with her hand to see whether he is solid. Then Abel, of course, it's me. Don't do that, Emilia. What the devil do you mean by this tomfoolery? So poking means she pokes him with her hand to see if he is solid. Poke means push. So she want to see whether her father is hard. After that, what did Abel say? Of course, it's me. And what the devil means, old fashioned way of showing annoyance of displeasure. So he say that what happened, normally we will say what happened to you, why you are doing like this, in that way. So he's telling that what the devil do you mean by this tomfoolery means foolish or silly behavior, because she is poking her father to see whether he is solid. So he is scolding her that what devil has made you to do this silly things. Then Mrs. Jordan say that you took us by surprise, father. Are you keeping quite well? So then when Abel said like that, immediately Mrs. Jordan say that you took us by surprise. So he don't know that they are thinking that Abel is dead, and that's why they have come to visit. So she said that you took us by surprise. Are you keeping quite well? So she's telling that you has brought us in a surprising way, and she is inquiring that are you keeping well. Then Abel trying to catch the words means try means what she is talking means sometimes we can't understand the meaning of the person what they are talking. So like in the same way he is trying to catch the words, and what did he say? What means he didn't understand, and again he was asking what. Then Mrs. Jordan said, are you quite well? Again she is asking, are you quite well means how are you, she is asking. Then Abel said, hey, I'm right enough, but for a bit of headache. Looking at Amelia. Amelia, what the dickens did I do with my new slippers? Then, what did he say when Jordan asked whether he is well or not? Then Abel was saying that, I am I'm right enough, but for a bit of headache. So he's telling that I'm okay, but I'm having a bit of headache. And looking at Amelia, he was asking that what the dickens means old fashioned and formal used in questions instead of devil to show that you are annoyed or surprised. So he is telling that what dickens did I do with my new slippers. So he is inquiring about his new slippers. Then Mrs. Slater then she'll be confused, and aren't they by the hearth father? So actually those slippers means those slippers was taken means she took those slippers and given to her husband, isn't it? So when her father inquired about those slippers, she was little bit confused and saying that aren't they father? So Abel said, I don't see them. Observing Henry trying to remove the slippers. Why you have got him on, Henry? So he was answering that I don't see. Abel was saying that I don't see them, and he is observing that Henry is trying to remove those slippers. Then he asked why you have means why you have got him on means why you are wearing them, Henry. So he is questioning his son-in-law that why he was wearing his slippers. Then Mrs. Slater promptly replies that I told him to put them on to stretch them. They were they were that new and hard. Now Henry, so what she says actually I only told him to wear because they are so hard as they are new. Is it means she is telling, isn't it, Henry? Then Mrs. Slater snatches the slippers from Henry and gives them to Abel, who puts them on and sits in the armchair. So she, when her father asked that why he was wearing those slippers, then Mrs. Slater say that as they are new and hard, I asked him to wear to get because means she asked him to wear because she want them to get stretched. So after by saying those words, she took those slippers from Henry and she gave it to her father. So he was wearing those slippers and sitting in the armchair. Mrs. Jordan, she was telling to Ben, saying that, well, I don't call that delicate, stepping into a dead man's shoes in such haste. So Mrs. Jordan was telling to her husband, means to Ben, that well means I don't call that delicate, stepping into a dead man's shoes in such haste. So she's telling that I don't think means in this situation as he is dead also means as Henry was wearing those slippers, she was telling that in this situation also they have taken his slippers. Victoria runs across to Abel and sits on the floor at his feet. By then, when Mrs. Jordan was telling like that, Victoria runs across to Abel, means her grandfather, and sits on the floor at his feet. And Victoria says, "Oh, Grandpa, I'm so glad you're not dead." So Victoria says that, "I'm very happy, Grandfather, that you're not dead." Then Mrs. Slater, in a vindictive whisper means talking about someone in a harsh or hasty manner. "Hold your tongue, Victoria." So she was scolding her daughter, saying that, "Hold your tongue, Victoria." Then Abel, "What's that? Who's gone dead?" By listening the words of Victoria, he asked, "Who's gone dead?" Means who has died. Then Mrs. Slater loudly she said that, "Victoria says she's sorry about your head." Then she's telling, means Mrs. Slater, she was lying saying that, Victoria was saying about your, means she was feeling sorry about your head. Then Abel, "Oh, thank you, Vicky, I am feeling better." So as Slater explained that Victoria was feeling sad about his headache, then Abel said, "Oh, thank you, but I am feeling little bit better, Victoria." Means he was explaining to Victoria. Again, then Abel say that, "Why, Ben, you are in mourning, and Lizzie too, and Emilia and Henry and little Vicky. What's gone dead? It's someone in the family." Then seeing the faces of everyone in the family, he asks everyone, "Why you are sad? Is anyone dead in our family?" He chuckles. Then what did Mrs. Slater says? "No one you know, father, a relation of Ben." What she says, "No one you know" means the person died is you don't know. He is a relative of Ben. Then Abel, "And what relation of Ben?" So he'll be asking, normally even we also, if we know anyone died, if that, who is he and what is the relation with the person, all those things we inquire, isn't it? In the same way, Abel also was inquiring that what is the relation to Ben. Then Mrs. Slater said, "His brother." Then immediately Ben says that, uh, Ben says to Mrs. Slater, "Damn it, I never had one." Then he'll be telling that, "I don't have brother." Then Abel, "Dear, dear, and what was his name, Ben?" Then he was asking to Ben that what was his name. Then Ben, at a loose he crosses to front of table. He says air, and he crosses to front of table. And Mrs. Slater, right side of table, prompting, "Frederick." So Mrs. Slater said, "Frederick." And Mrs. Jordan, "Albert." Left side of table, prompting, "Albert." Ben, "Fred Alp Isaac." Then what did Ben said? What is the name of his brother? Is Erfred Albert, Erfred Alp Isaac. Then Abel said, "Isaac, and where did your brother Isaac die?" Then Abel was questioning that, "Isaac, and where did he die?" Means he was asking that, "Where is your brother Isaac died?" Then Ben said, in Australia. So he's telling he has died in Australia. Abel rising, "Well, I suppose you have only been waiting for me to begin tea. I'm feeling hungry." So what did Abel do? He was telling that, "You people have been waiting for me to begin tea. I'm feeling hungry." Then Mrs. Slater, taking up the kettle, "I'll make tea." Then Mrs. Slater said, "I'll make tea." Then Abel was telling, "Come along now, sit you down and let's be jolly." He said, "No, you come and sit, and we will be," means he is asking her to sit down and be jolly. And Abel sits at the head of the table facing spectators. So see here, if you see in the picture also, you can understand that Abel was sitting in the main, means in the means sits at the head of the table. Here in the middle we can see. So he was sitting on the table. Abel, suddenly recollecting, "Hey, Amelia and Henry, what the devil did you mean by shifting my bureau out of my bedroom?" Henry and Mrs. Slater are speechless. "Do you hear me, Henry, Amelia?" So, as he was sitting on in the means near the head of the table, suddenly he recollected that, and he said to Amelia and Henry that, "What the devil did you mean by shifting my bureau out of my bedroom?" So he was questioning that, why you have brought my bureau out of my bedroom. So Henry and Mrs. Slater was speechless because they didn't expected that their father is alive and he'll come down and he will question on them all these things, isn't it? So they are speechless. Then when they are speechless, Abel was very much angry, and he was telling that, "Do you hear me, Henry and Amelia?" In a question, and in a questioning way he was asking that, "Do you hear me, Henry and Amelia?" Then immediately Mrs. Jordan says, "What's bureau was that, father?" Then Jordan asked that, "What bureau was that, father?" Then Abel says that, "Why, my bureau, that one I bought." Then he was telling, "Why my bureau?" Means, why you have taken my bureau? That bureau means, he was means the one I bought, means he has bought that bureau. So he was asking that, why you have taken my bureau which I have brought. So till here this is the lesson. I think you have understood till here, and we will be completing the remaining part of the lesson in the next session. Thank you. Have a good day.